All right, so I get this question all the time. How much money do I need to retire? And truthfully, the answer is going to be different for all of you, but I'm going to help you out a little bit here today. Now, I specialize in the actual management of your investments, picking and choosing the best possible investments for you to be on track for retirement. And while I'm confident I can get you to your retirement goals, first we have to understand what those goals are, which leads us back to the question. How much money do you need for retirement? So to answer this, we're going to talk about something called the safe withdrawal rate. And basically, this is just the rate that you can spend your money without ever running out. To start, we're going to take your yearly expenses and multiply that by 25. For example, if you think that when you retire, you're going to want to spend $40,000 a month, multiply that by 25, it gives you $1 million. Wait, let's go back for a second. I said that the safe withdrawal rate was the amount that you could spend and never run out of money? I mean, how's that possible? There should be some catch, right? Actually, it's a simple math model, and there's a really popular study that explains this. Most of the time, it's referred to as the 4% rule, but if you want to do some deep, heavy reading, then look up the Trinity study. If you don't want to do the research, I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, basically the study went back to 1926 and said, how much money do you need to retire for every year since 1926? Now the study is based on investing in 50% stocks, 50% bonds, very basic. And what they found that is if you withdrew 4% of your money for 25 years, you would have money left over 100% of the time. Now, if you withdrew 4% of your money for 30 years straight, you would have money left over 96% of the time. The reason for the difference would be if you retired in a rough year, if the markets had a really solid down year and you tried to retire in that year, had no other income coming in at all, then that's why you would only have 4% a year for 30 years, 96% of the time. Really depend on the year that you decided to retire. I don't want to mislead you here. It's technically not bulletproof. I mean, the study went back to 1926, but who knows what might happen in the future. But it's a great place to start developing goals, to get an idea of what you need, what you think you might need for retirement. And remember that most people generally have some other type of income coming in that early portion of retirement. Maybe you still have a hobby or a job, something that you make a little bit of money. It could be Social Security, pensions, things like that. Now, if you're really geeky and you want to play with the numbers, go through and figure out 3%. Don't take the 4% like the study does. Go through and figure out, what if you only took out 3% of your investments each year, or the money from your investments? You'd really be surprised. Okay, so let's go back to the 4% rule here for a second. How'd they come up with 4%? What does that even mean? Why didn't they choose 5%, 10%, 11%? Why did we narrow it down to 4%? It's actually quite simple. Basically, it's really simple. There are tons of studies out there that show that if you reinvest your dividends from your investments, that historically your investments will grow at an average rate of 7% a year. That's going back to 1900. So the average return for the market is 7% a year average, not every year, just over the course of all of those years. At the same time, inflation has been on a 3% average per year. So basically, if you're averaging a 7% gain, you're losing 3% of the value to inflation, you're left with 4%. If at the end of every year you spent 4% of your retirement account, technically you'd end the year with the same amount that you started with. So you could theoretically keep spending the 4% and still have money left over, assuming history continues. Now that's a lot of history, right? We're going back to 1900. You've averaged 7% since 1900. That's a pretty good track record to gauge your historical statistics. Also inflation since 1900, 3%, that's the average. So really have some solid numbers to work with there. So what's that tell you? Well, think of all of the events that have happened since 1900. We got Great Depression, you got wars, lots of bubbles. Most recently, they called it the Great Recession during that whole housing financial crisis in there. But what it tells you is through all of the severe ups and downs, you still average a 7% return and 3% inflation. So that's why we're really focused in on that 4% number. This means that investing for the long run is truly your best opportunity for your retirement plans. Things change though. Investing, I have to say, investing can be risky, but that's why you call a guy and let them put you on the best track for your retirement. The lesson here is to get started early and be consistent with your contributions. At Jazz, we're focused on your retirement goals so that when you get to retirement, you have what you need. If you want more information on the Roth IRA or the IRA, we actually did a few other videos on that. I'll link them in the description below for you. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, send me an email, or give me a call directly. I'll leave my information right